Turn to the Old Testament tonight. We're going to look at some words of Solomon, King Solomon, David's boy. We're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter 11. We're going to talk about an old Gaither song. Y'all ever been to Lambert's where they have the throw grove? That's kind of biblical. Back in the old days, when the River Nile used to come up out of the banks, the River Jordan would come up out of the banks, they would, when the water was just about receded, where they could take a little skiff, little boat, little flat-bottom boat, they would go out there and they would take their seed that they were going to grow their grain with, and they would cast it on the water. And it was a risk. It wasn't guaranteed to work because that seed would have to fall down. The fish would not eat it. The birds wouldn't get it. But it would fall down into the silt, and as the water receded, it would have some good nutrient-rich ground in order to grow. But it took a lot of faith to go out there and to take your seed and just chunk it in the water. That was a kind of a risky endeavor. And Solomon was writing to us about this because we are supposed to do the same exact thing. Oh, yeah. All right. Now, in Ecclesiastes 11:1, it says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again. Give portions to 7, yes, 8, or 6, 7. Right? Ain't that what the kids say now? Give portions to 7, yes, to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. If clouds are full of water, they pour rain on the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks up to the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the path of the wind, or how the body is formed in the mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let not your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well." So Solomon is taking us on a verse-by-verse. This is risky. This is not so risky. You could call it intrepid. That's a good word for it. When we start off, he is saying to do something that is absolutely strange. Throwing your seed out of a boat. Throwing it out into the water. That is not the way that I grew up learning how to plant a garden, right? But as it was custom during that time, Solomon knew that everybody would know about this because that is the way that they covered the side of the banks of the rivers with all of that good grain and all of that rich soil. And it took a good amount of faith to do it. So why is he telling us this? When we cast our bread upon the water, what we are basically doing is investing in ministry, and we don't understand, we don't know how it's going to work out. We are just trusting that it's going to go the way it's supposed to go. We are hoping that when we make a donation to something or somebody, they don't just go off and buy drugs with it, right? We are putting a certain amount of faith that the good thing is going to happen. Have y'all ever had to cast your bread on the water with your kids? You have to trust them to go and do something, and you're not really sure if they're going to be able to do it, or if they're going to do it. Listen. My parents had to cast bread in my water, and my water was usually turbulent. It had stuff floating in it. It was just, it was just some kicked up water, right? But when I turned 16, my daddy trusted me enough to take me to get a driver's license, all right? And when I got that driver's license, they trusted me enough to leave the house not knowing if I was going to come back. Not because I was dead, but just that's how I was. Like, uh-oh, let's see how far this thing will go. Let's see how fast it'll go. Let's see how many donuts we can do. Let's see if we can squeal the tires. Let's see if we can do all of these things. It took some faith for them to cast that bread on the water in my life. Somebody hired me for a job when I was a young man at the grocery store. They didn't know if I had any sense or not. But I was just bagging groceries, right? How can you mess that up? Well, apparently you can. You put too much or you put too little or you use plastic instead of paper, and you can really mess up groceries, okay? But they trusted me to be able to do that. And people are investing in you from a ministry standpoint. And are you a good investment? People are casting their seed, they're dropping their seed in the water of your life, hoping that it's going to take and that it's going to grow. Your parents invested in you when you were small. They kept you alive. They kept you fed. They hopefully gave you some sense. They eventually just had to turn you loose. And now, as you get older, you start investing in others. It happens when you're a child. You start investing in others with friendship. And when you were a young person, how many times have y'all had a best friend tell a lie on you and stab you in the back? Or it is amazing to me how kids can be BFFs one day and, I just can't stand up there and just touch you the next day. But then the week after that, we're BFFs again. We're besties. And it is amazing at how they go from one extreme to the other. When people are poured into you, it is very, I don't know, it's kind of anxiety inducing because people don't want to waste their time, they don't want to waste their seed, they don't want to waste their effort. They want to know that they're making a good investment in you. But God is teaching us in His Word, all you're supposed to do is cast and trust. Just put your seed out there. Just put it out. If you've got an opportunity to be like Jesus, you do it. You drop that seed. You invest in people, even though you may think that it's not going to pay off. It doesn't matter. As long as you are casting that seed, you're sending that bread, you are putting it out there that you love somebody, and hopefully they receive that love and they reciprocate it or pass it on to someone else. And as we do this, we just keep on just spreading our love across the world with as many deeds as possible. Hopefully people will start to understand it and accept it, and that makes them want to do it too. But then he goes in verse 2 and he's like, hey, give portions to 7, yes to 8, for you don't know what disaster may come upon your land. Hey, he's like, throw your seed out in the water, but at the meantime, be sure you make good investments. Invest in a bunch of different things that you know are going to pay off, because I don't want you to be empty-handed. So there are some things that we should be doing that we know works, that we know it pays off. It may not be as big a dividends as taking a big risk, but what happens is you have a diverse portfolio in that you ain't got all your eggs in one basket. Because if you put all of your faith in one person or one system or even a church, what's going to happen is you're going to get let down. And that's going to make you fall in ministry, and therefore putting everything in one basket was not a good investment. So he's saying to diverse. Get into some things that you know are going to pay off. Have you ever spent time in prayer, reading your Bible, doing for others that you wound up worse off because of it? Those are sound, good, biblical ministry investments that when you do that, it never returns void, okay? It always pays off. If you can be like Jesus where you are, that could influence everything in a great way. That is an easy investment. That is a sound investment. You're telling me all I have to do is love other people? Yeah, that's the greatest commandment, is to love Jesus and love everyone else as yourself. That is an sound investment. It's secure. So make sure you're doing the things, not just casting your bread on the water, but put it in the bank too. Store it up. Put it to where you know it's going to grow. There's a plowed up field you done broke up that ground in. Plant it there. You know it'll grow, right? And then he says in verse 3, if clouds are full of water, they pour rain on the earth. Whether the tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, that's where it will lie. So this is also be cautious. Y'all ever heard the phrase, it is what it is? That's Bible. It is what it is, Madison. That's just the way it works. There are things that you cannot change. There are people that you cannot change. There are situations that you cannot change. They just are what they are. And when we get to trying to change these situations by investing in them, sometimes it's never going to work. That's why the Bible teaches about do not throw your pearls at pigs. All right? Do not cast your pearls upon swine because they're not going to appreciate it. Instead, you give it, put it where it can pay off the most, where it is a good, sound investment. Because if you keep on trying to throw pearls at pig in order to get them filled up, that's never going to happen. You got to throw this some slop, throw them some corn cobs or something like that. Let them gnaw on that for a little bit, and they'll wind up getting full. And they'll waller in the mud, and they will never change because you put lipstick on a pig, it's just a pretty pig, right? I don't know, it may not be that pretty. But it still is going to, it is going to be what it is, and there ain't nothing you can do to change it. And when we get to wrapping our ministry around things that are not good investments, well, that's where we got to remember sometimes. It is what it is. He says in verse 4, whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. So what he's saying here is that there is going to be a time where there should be some conditions that if you look up to the sky and you see the rain coming, you see the wind coming, you're probably not going to be planting during that time or out picking the vegetables during that time. It does come up a cloud, honey. It's time to go inside. You don't want to get all wet and catch a cold and get pneumonia, do you? No, you don't want to wind up having that rub Vicks salve all over your feet and put on some socks all night. No, you don't want to do that. You got to stay out of that rain, stay out of that weather. You got to stay out of it because it's bad stuff. I think what Solomon wants us to understand is the conditions don't dictate ministry. Ministry should dictate the conditions. People will often be scared away. We've canceled church because of rain before, and it didn't even rain. It's weird. Like, okay. James Spann, he was just lying. All right. Can't get them all right, right? No, you look outside, it's dark. The wind's blowing, it's fixing to rain. Somebody could have got saved that night. But it was raining, right? That's a tough one, ain't it? Y'all heard the saying, don't be afraid of the storm, just learn how to dance in the rain. It's kind of like that. We cannot let the conditions of life keep us from investing and doing and being what God wants us to be. So there are some good opportunities for ministry when hard times hit. The easy time, the easy stuff just goes away. And now you're in the middle of a rain and windstorm, and this ministry is going to be hard. But it's still going to reap a reward. You just got to not worry about the conditions and just keep on serving anyway. I think that's like a very intrepid action. In verse 5, he says, as you don't know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. So there are certain mysteries that we will never understand. There are some things that we will never grasp, but God has made everything. He is in control of all things. Do you know what the providence of God is? That is God's provision. God's going to give you what you need. He said so. He promised us that. And since God is the one who made everything, owns everything, and can give us what we need, you don't believe me? Check this out. You could have been born without a head. You wouldn't have lived, but you could have been born without a head. You could have been born without legs or without arms, and no slight to anybody that has some physical disability. But God has given you the opportunities that you have. They come from God. God formed you together in your mother's womb. He created you, just like He has created people that were born without arms, people that were born that have Down syndrome or stuff like that. And He uses them. He forms them together, and He uses them. If you've got the ability to read, God gave you that. Yes, some teachers might have taught you how to say your ABCs or Miss Rachel or somebody like that. They done got up in there with you. Your Cocoa Melons is working and all of that. But hey, God gave you the ability to be able to read. If you can work, God gave you the ability to be able to work. Some people go to college and hey, you've been given an extra dose of intelligence and depth, right? So that's just the way it works. So everything is up to God, and I think He's taught us in our lives that trusting Him is a good investment. There are things that we will never understand. There will be things that you don't know how that works. Like here's a classic example of how we don't understand God's provision. Okay, I have heard the same story for years. I could not make ends meet. I can't pay my bills on time. I just can't. And I'm always behind. I don't make enough, or my expenditures are more than my incoming, and I don't know what to do. The advice I always give, is always give God some first. That's biblical. That's what He taught us to do. So if I'm giving God some first, the first fruit as an offering, how much do I give? That's on your heart, all right? I mean, a lot of times we say 10% because the Bible was talking about put a tenth in the storehouse, and that's where we got the 10% from, right? There are times when God will lay it on your heart to give more, or maybe there's a particular thing or an offering or somebody's in need or something like that. God will lay it on your heart, and you're like, all right, I'm going to offer that. I'm going to give that. I'm going to give that. Here's the point. As you start trusting God with your money, you are basically taking what little you got and you are opening up your hand to God. And you're letting God take out what He deserves, since He put it all in there. He's taking out what He deserves, and He is making the rest of it stretch. And all of a sudden, when people start tithing and giving to ministry, that is such a good investment that people all of a sudden have more money. You stop wasting money, and all of a sudden God is working in your pocketbook. It is amazing how that works. And it's all because God gave us everything that we have. He gave us the ability to make money. He gave us everything associated with value and wealth. And And since he's given it all to us, he's not going to let us go without. And as soon as we start giving to him, you'll just all of a sudden just find extra money. It's amazing how that works. And it has happened to so many people that I know it's not coincidence. It has to be God. And there's no way to explain it. I know people that were honing titles, and then they wound up owning a dealership. It don't make no sense how that works. Invest in God. There's some things that we will never understand. I don't understand how that works. I just know that it does. That's one of the weirdest things about having a relationship with God is letting him meddle in your pocketbook. Y'all still use pocketbooks? Are they called that anymore? Purse? Y'all ain't never heard pocketbook? That ain't a... But y'all know what 6-7 is. You don't know what a pocketbook is? Were there ever books in the pocketbook? I don't know. That's always puzzled me. Anyhow, that may be one of those things that you cannot understand. So, you know, God's the maker of all things, and he knows what a pocketbook is. Right? Let him in yours. How about that? Verse number 6, last verse, it says, sow your seed in the morning, and at evening, let not your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both would do exceptionally well. So, basically what he is saying here is the New Testament puts it, let everything you do be as though you're doing it unto the Lord. Let every action that you do, everything that you perform, every investment that you make, let it be done as though you're doing it for God. And when you do that, you are sowing your seed in the morning and at night. You're basically doing your job, and you're doing the thing that is expected out of you, the thing to provide for your family, the thing to make good grades. You're doing the things that are expected out of you. But then, when you get off, when you go home, when you are having relaxing time, don't let the devil in then. You let your guard down, and he will take away your resources. What God teaches us through the smartest man that ever lived, Solomon, is that work in the morning, you also work in the evening. You don't know which one's going to pay off the most, so you best just stay busy. Stay busy all the time. Because I can promise you this, if you ever get to a place where you're not working for the Lord, you're not reaping the benefit from the Lord. That's just the way it works. We have got to invest in ministry in many different ways, in every way that we can think of, and in so many ways that we don't understand. We just invest in people, and we just keep on throwing that bread out the boat. Just keep on chunking them rolls. Just keep on throwing that seed in the water. Just keep on doing the things that we know work because God wants us to. And the more God can trust you as an investor, the more he's going to give you to invest. That's how it works. The more God... Jabez was a guy just in the middle of the begat. Just begat. This one had this one, and this one had this one. Oh, and Jabez, he prayed. And he prayed a prayer. And his prayer was, God, increase my territory. I'm going to give it back to you. Give me more. I trust you. Trust me. And God expanded his territory. That is like, okay, I was in training. Now I've graduated. All right? Now I'm ready to get a master's degree. I'm ready to become a PhD, a doctor of investing in ministry now. I have seen how God works. I have seen how God takes things and turns them around. I just got to keep on investing in it. I got to keep on pouring myself out and pouring myself into other people. It's not going to fall out. It's not going to not grow. It's going to grow. It has to grow. Has anybody ever looked at you and thought that you were a bad investment? Somebody poured into you one time. They poured into you by taking you to church or teaching a Sunday school class that you were in. I remember Miss Gladys Hayes and Miss Cat Ford. Those two ladies used to be my Sunday school teacher when I was a little boy. And they would take turns teaching the lesson, and the other one would sit there at the table with us to keep us from, being weird or hitting each other, spitballing or something, right? Those ladies invested in me. They gave their time to prepare a lesson and to bring a snack. They poured themselves out. They cast their bread in the waters of my life at a young age, and it worked. There was a lady that had a little hair hut, a little bitty trailer. Y'all would call it a tiny home. It was a beauty shop. Had a few of them big hair dryer things on it. She had a little Coke box. They was 10 cents. That was cool. Her name was Nova, and Nova was the first lady to ever take me to church. All right. She would always ask us because we'd be out at Granny and Pawpaw's station in our front yard, and she'd always like, "Y'all want to go to church Sunday? Y'all want to go to church?" Finally, me and my little brother, he was old enough to go. We went to church. She took us to church, and then afterwards she took us to Alex City to play at the park by the airport, and we went down to Tyler's and got a hamburger, whatever it was called back then. She poured into me, And years later, when my grandma was in Brown Nursing Home, I went in there and I saw her name on the back of her wheelchair. And I just, Nova Dugard? Looked up. I'm Jason Trevette. I was a little bitty boy, and you took me to church. I want you to know that I've surrendered to preach. I'm a pastor now, and I owe a lot of that to you. And she just cried. She made an investment, and it paid off. I'm sure there were probably times, because I had a smart mouth and I couldn't sit still, very like Tommy boy at the gas station, right? And they were, I'm sure she had some doubts sometimes. Like, I don't know if this is a good investment or not. Just keep on investing. We never know. I'm hoping that y'all kids remember me when y'all get older. And you're like, yeah, I remember that guy. He used to pick us up. I appreciate that, right? When we do things like that for people, we have no idea how it's going to work out. All we know is that we are making a good investment. So this week, go and invest in somebody. Tell somebody you love them. Tell somebody that God loves them. Be Jesus in the middle of a classroom or a living room. Just wherever you are, pour into people. Invest in people. You will see people get saved. You'll see people get changed. And you will reap the reward for that. Oh, it's nothing that makes you happier than being in the middle of ministry. Ain't nothing like it. When you're doing something for somebody and they show appreciation for you, and they're like, thank you so much for doing that for me. It's like, oh, this is just the greatest thing ever. I feel like I did what God wanted me to do. I'm in God's will. Wow. And then you get humbled because you're like, I can't believe that God let me take part in His work. Because I'm afraid of messing it up. I get up here to talk. I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. It's been over 20 years and I ain't cussed yet. Great, right? That's right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not planning on it, but I'm just saying that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Church licensed me one day, and I had my license revoked yet. So that's good. That's a good thing. Maybe they made a good investment. Yeah. So let me pray over us. Go out, throw your rolls, and watch what grows. Right?